I'd like to welcome all of you to this panel session called Women in GIS. And then I see a lot of really familiar faces. And then I'd like to welcome everyone, the panelists, but also people will in the floor. So let me just briefly introduce this session. So this is the Woman in GIS. And my name is Inhye, and then I am a PhD candidate in geography. And then I'm so honored to be a moderator for this session. And we are going to talk about women in GIS. So this is, I don't want this session to be too formal, but I hope this session will be more of a free discussion, so that if anyone has any question, you can raise your hand, or you can raise your, we know that we have virtual hand or whatsoever, so I can facilitate the talks between the people and then the panels, and so this will be just free discussion, I hope. And yeah, so just without further ado, I'd like to just briefly introduce our full 4 panels. So I'd like to just briefly introduce the name and then the affiliation, and then when you are introduced, our panels, you can introduce yourself, of course. So I'd like to welcome Professor Madden from Geography. She's also the head of CGR, so you may find her already familiar. So hello, Dr. Madden. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, sure. Hi. Thank you very much. This is a great panel to be a part of. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So as you said, I'm professor in the Department of Geography and the director of the Center for Geospatial Research. My background is in ecology and biology and geography. So I'm really interested in landscape ecology and geographic techniques. So thank you.
Thank you
for inviting me.
And also Dr. Yao. Nice to meet you, Dr. Yao. Dr. Yao is also from geography, and then yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Angela Yao. I think I have seen and talked with most of you. Most of you were in my classes, so we have more in-depth interactions. So I have been in the department for 18 years. My background is in GIS and urban analysis. Yeah, so I look forward to more discussions with you a little bit later.
Awesome, thank you. And also Manasi from College of Environmental and Design. She's a PhD candidate, I assume. Yeah, welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Manasi, and I'm, like Inhye mentioned, a candidate in environmental planning PhD at the College of Environment and Design. I have an architecture degree from India and an environmental design degree from UGA, master's in environmental design from UGA. And land use planning and transportation planning really intrigue me. And that's precisely what my research is in, and I'm a GIS nerd.
Welcome. We are all GIS nerds at some point.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yes. Thank you, Manasi, for coming in. And also lastly, our co-host of this GIS Day, and then yeah, Amanda from Geography. She's also a PhD student.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm a PhD student. Dr. Madden is actually my advisor. And I am a third-year PhD student in environmental science and food forests in Atlanta. So I work a lot on these community projects using GIS and remote sensing to look at urban developments around sensitive zones. So I could talk a little more about that, but I'm glad to be here and look forward to answering everyone's questions.
Thank you everyone for joining this session. And then as I mentioned, I prepared just a couple of questions, but like if you have any like more questions or you want our panelists to elaborate more of some topics, you can always like join in and then like raise your hands, and then I can facilitate the conversation. So the first question I prepared for all of our panelists is how did you fall in love with GIS? So Dr. Madden, do you want to talk about this first?
Sure, sure. So I think I was had the beginnings when I was actually 11 years old. I started working with my father, who was a land surveyor, and he needed somebody to hold the rod when he was making his measurements. And he was always making maps. He was a civil engineer, but he was also a land surveyor. So our dining room table always had big maps on it, and he was always drawing on them. And I think I was also encouraged by my mother, who was a math major, math and physics. So so I had that kind of, I think, you know, encouragement maybe, you know, growing up. So that was really good. But my love was in biology. So I studied biology instead, but I soon found out that I could get a job if I knew how to make maps. So I started learning cartography, and I really loved it. But everything was in hard copy analog form. I worked in a remote sensing lab as an undergraduate in the 1970s, and which is a great opportunity to. I flew in the airplane to take the photos, and I went canoeing to identify the plants, and then went in the lab and made maps. So I was making maps for a long time. But the first time I saw anything that resembled GIS was during my master's work. And it was SimMap was the name of the program that came out of Harvard. And the map that you could make was from a dot matrix printer. So it would give O's and X's and then, you know, double strike to make different colors. And it was a map of the Adirondacks and looking at air pollution. And I just couldn't believe that we could do this with computers. So that was fantastic. And then when I came here to start my PhD in 1984, we were doing remote sensing in the lab, but not really GIS, until we got ArcInfo and ArcGIS, or sorry, the PC ArcInfo and also the workstation version. And then I started using that for my PhD work, and also we taught workshops of how to, they were 1 week long, how to use PC ArcInfo. And, you know, it has been part of my life ever since. It's a perfect combination of art. And, you know, what I like to do in art, it's like making a quilt, because you have little pieces and you put them all together, and then you have amazing images and data. And then working at a broad scale, landscape scales, asking geospatial questions, doing analysis, it just does everything. So I love it.
Yeah, I can see that like your whole career is almost a history of GIS.
Yes, yes.
And then I personally can relate to like how you began, how you encountered the GIS. I also like learned like how to deal with this like ArcMap GIS in my sophomore year, I guess, in college. And then like the professor who taught us the GIS was also the landscape ecologist. So like this is how I first met GIS, and then like, oh, this is something that I can do some indoor jobs. And then like, because like at the same time, many the grad student under his lab, which I later pursued my master's in his lab too. There's so many like grad student who does the field job, and then like I feel like, oh no, I don't think I can do the field job. And then like, guys, maybe I can do some indoorsy work. So
Okay.
yeah, that's a little bit of like side talk.
Oh.
Dr. Yao, do you like to add some like how you fell in love with GIS?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I got into GIS actually by accident. I started studying GIS. That's also very early, kind of starting from college. But that's a college that I have never heard of. So that we have the applying to colleges. In the last year of high school, I applied to all the other universities, but not the university that I finally went to. I have never heard about it. Back in those days, we don't have internet, right? So I only I was like 16 years old. I didn't really know a whole lot of universities. That's a pretty famous university, but I didn't know. By some accident, people put my files into that university, so I got admitted to that university. I was interested in computer science, applied to all kinds of computer science programs, but this is a university, it's all about maps, survey, remote sensing, photography, GIS, all those kind of things, but not really computer science. So I was a little bit disappointed. After getting into it and studying maps and GIS, spatial relationships, topology, all those kind of things, I find it's just fascinating. I haven't heard about before, but it's just so fascinating. And then I realized, oh, well, when I was little, I was known for, in my family, I was known for being good at mental maps. Wherever I went, just once, I can easily find the way to get there. So people, my parents will trust me if I need to find some place, they will let me go. So they know I can do it. So this is a perfect match. This really kind of clicked. So now when I look back, I thought, well, life can take you everywhere, but you do have a choice. If you find it's something exciting, you can do it, right? And later I can share with you later in my life, there were different choices. The life took me to a different path, but then I realized that's not something I wanted. So I made a decision to come back to GIS. I went to Europe and then to the United States to continue graduate school and still studying GIS.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I mean, like at first we just like step in this GIS world by accident, and then like we just like clicked and then like fell in love. That's how, yeah, things like important in life actually happens.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Monse, do you wanna share your story?
Yeah, I think I share one thing that I share with everybody here is a fascination for maps.
Mhm.
And that's how I got into GIS. I actually got into GIS as a result of my higher education choices. But in my architecture background, I did my architecture in India. And as you guys probably know, with architectural schools, they're really heavy on hand graphics. And in our first couple years as architecture students, we were asked to draw maps by hand. And just because, you know, as an architect, you're also learning about context and how you're placing your buildings in what context. So all these context maps and the big picture maps, we drew them by hand. So scaling them, coloring them, it was really cool. And when I started to decided to switch to planning, after working as an architect in India for a couple of years, I came to UGA CED and I took the first Intro to GIS class in my department. And I hadn't caught, because it was a learning curve, because I was learning GIS for the first time. So this one assignment we did, I still remember, we did network analysis, and that blew my mind. We were doing transit land use analysis, and we were trying to see, oh, this bus route doesn't go there, so that's a food desert, and so on and so forth. And that just blew my mind, that I had so much information in my hand, and I could come to conclusions, solid conclusions, using those maps and that analysis. So I think that's where it all started.
If I may, I totally relate to your story because my undergrad major is also landscape architecture, which involves a lot of like hand drawings and also planning, designing. And as a part of like my curricular, that's how I learned GIS, because like there are also like landscape ecology professors and also the planning professors, and then they really wanted to show some like visible analysis, how we are going to use these areas, and then like what are your plans. And then GIS was really a good way to express like what is in your mind, and then that's how we learned GIS. And then yeah, I totally relate to your story. And yeah, I'd like to also hear from Amanda how your story.
Yes, thank you, Inhye. Well, I like to call my story, I took the scenic route to get here. Like everybody else, I did not start in GIS. I actually started my academics in geology because I was really interested in studying the world. I spoke to an academic advisor in high school, what kind of career I want to pursue, where I want to go to college. And I said, I just want to study the world. And they said, well, geology is the study of worlds. So I chose geology as my major. But when I was taking the courses as an undergrad, I didn't quite feel at home in geology. I loved it, but it wasn't where I really felt the compassion in what I was doing. So I also took art classes, and I also took classes in other subjects. And by the time I graduated, I ended up getting a degree in university studies, which is a combination of a whole bunch of degrees into one. And my three major focuses were environmental science or science, geology, and art. So it was like having a combination of 3 degrees in one. And I was hired immediately by Los Alamos National Labs. And that's where I was first exposed to GIS. There were these group of people in cubicles doing really cool maps and stuff. And I was thinking, they're doing much more interesting things than I'm doing. And I also realized that people with higher degrees also had more freedom to do what they want to do. And that inspired me to go back to school. So after a few years of working in industry, I decided it was time for me to seek higher education. And I went to New Mexico Highlands University, where I started studying environmental science with my focus in remote sensing. And then I was asked to excavate a mammoth by the archaeology professor to teach his students how to use the total station and other GIS equipment. And so I also got exposed to archaeology and was seeking a second degree in archaeology. And I didn't have much experience or much guidance in my own university because it was still a vaguely new concept. Not a lot of professors had experience in GIS or remote sensing, and especially remote sensing. So I took it on my own to go to a conference in Louisville, Kentucky called the ASPRS, American Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, knowing almost absolutely nothing about what I was getting myself into. And that's where I met Dr. Madden and a bunch of other students studying what I wanted to study. And I realized I wasn't alone. There's this big community and network of GIS scientists out there who are just so supportive. And it was just, I felt like this is where I belong. And through meeting Dr. Madden, I was asked to apply for the NASA Develop project, which I was accepted into. And that's what brought me to UGA. And after working with the Forest Service and just getting to know all these other avenues of GIS, I'm now a PhD student at the University of Georgia, and I'm just excited to see where the next step in this journey takes me.
Yeah, that is really really like inspiring journey for you, like to share like how like your previous kind of like idea of like the first you land on archaeology, geology, and then like it moves to like geography in general, and then like GIS and then remote sensing. Like this pathway is like really a beauty of like geography. Like the geography as a discipline, it can like embrace all different disciplines, and then like we can make some synergy and then the co-benefits out of it. And then that is something that like the power of geography. Yeah. And I get to know that like you have like we are now in the dealing with this GIS, and then like some of us are in geography, but still it's really good to learn that like you have different background, and then like these are somehow overlaps with GIS, but like you have some different specific backgrounds. Biology for Dr. Madden, more of like GIS system, computer modeling for Dr. Yao, architecture in Monzi, and then geology for Amanda. So do you have any, like, before we move to the next question, do you think like how your special expertise can contribute to this GIS world? And I don't know, anyone who just like.
I can kind of follow up with when I was an undergrad, all the art classes I took, I never thought I would get anywhere with an art degree. So it was never really on my mind to focus on art as far as a career. But GIS just incorporates so much design into creating maps. And so I'm able to use that creative expression to relate really difficult and hard to understand concepts to clients and to other people that I'm working with throughout other activities that I've been a part of.
Yeah, to jump to what Amanda was saying, as a planner, it must be your skill set to be interdisciplinary, and GIS has really helped me to connect with people from different fields, listen to them, see what they're doing, and most of them tend to be more technical than planners usually are. So GIS has enabled me to learn their techniques and then go back to the planners and tell them how that makes sense. And it's just opened my mind to so much interdisciplinary collaboration, and that adds to my skill set as a planner, because I want to act as a link between the planning and the interdisciplinary world and the community, which is the end user most times. So GIS has been such a blessing to bridge that gap for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when we are like facilitating this communication between like more of layperson, the public with this like science field, we really need this kind of tool, kind of like bridge the gap of this like understanding between the people and then the people who are actually doing this kind of research or like practitioners. And then in that kind of sense, GIS really like is helping a lot. And then it's so much more widespread. And then now more and more people are learning GIS, and then they are so much aware of this, what GIS is. And then I think that's really a promising kind of achievement so far. Let's move forward to the next question I prepared. So I'd like to ask you, like, do you have any like memorable moment, like while you are pursuing career in GIS and then your own expertise? Like, do you have any like significant moment that like, oh, this I made this achievement, and then this, like, for example, this really is meaningful for the community or our academic field, or just to mankind in general? Do you have any experience to share with us?
Well, that's a very lofty topic, but I will say I was really honored to have the opportunity to put together the GIS manual for ASPRS. And it was mainly just because I was involved in ASPRS, and, you know, like Amanda said, you just go to the conferences and you can get involved, just like AAG or, you know, many ERISA, many other professional societies. And they had a manual of photogrammetry and one of remote sensing and one of DEMs and one for radar. So they did not have one for GIS. So I offered to do that, to edit it. And mainly because I thought through ISPRS, I knew so many people all over the world, who do all these different, and it wasn't just, it was actually in my mind GI science. So bringing in, you know, photogrammetry and visualization and lots of different kinds of applications and remote sensing, analysis. I just thought this will be so much fun to just invite people to write chapters. And I think I had no idea how much work is involved. And it ended up, I don't know how long it took to do it, but it was at least 3 years, I think. And we would have some kind of weekly or every 2 weeks, we'd have telephone calls with ASPRS, and I would just, my stomach would be in a knot. I'd be just dreading those calls because, you know, they want you to stay on a schedule, and just, some people sent their chapters right away and some people didn't. And and I didn't want to, and in retrospect, I should have, but I didn't want to cut out any material because everybody's chapters were awesome. So this book just kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And they talked about, should we divide it into 2 separate books? And they ended up not. So it's such a doorstop. Not too many people, I think, want to carry it around. But it was, in retrospect, one of the, I think one of the best experiences I ever had. I would do it differently if I had to do it again, but I go back to it. It's from 2009, so it is outdated now, but every chapter has such good history and lots of references. I pull it out a lot when I'm talking to students, and so I just felt like it was you know, something that came out of the University of Georgia. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah. Amanda, would you like show me like how like thick it is?
It's like 900, I don't know, pages or something.
This is what Dr. Madden is talking about. I
Yeah.
I thought it was 2 books.
But yes, this is.
It ended up just being 1 volume.
1 volume. I thought it was 2 volumes. Yeah, it's
No.
giant. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I have a chapter in it. Thank
Yes,
you,
Yes,
Margaret.
you do. Yes, I went to all the experts, so yes. And your chapter came in and it was, you know, right on time. I remember that.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was great. Yeah, that's really a very important, very special volume to me as well, the whole thing. Yeah, I think it's the first, I don't think even, you said it's kind of it's a little dated. It was published in 2009. I don't really recall anything like that published afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Even the,
Yeah.
do you think there are some? Well, now there's a GIS and T, it's an online version, but different nature.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there should be more online versions, living documents, you know, that can be updated, and the remote sensing, the manual of remote sensing is that way now. It is interactive, it's online, you know, or so I think that would be the future.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, like 2009 seems pretty like such a like history, like, but still like I mean like 2007, 8, 9. I think that kind of time was like how like when this GIS as a like tool became really widespread, and then that is also the time that I got acquainted with GIS, and then like that is the perfect time to like write about like the fundamentals of GIS, and then like that is really meaningful, and then like it's really important work for you to do that. So since we are in like 2020, and then I assume that like many people are aware of what GIS is, and then there are so many like academia and industry involving this GIS technology, and then the tools, and also the GIS as a science is really like happening all around the world. And then I like to like ask a question, because I believe this time is more of the maturity of GIS, because we have already passed the really like kind of burgeoning time of GIS. Now it's more like a mature time. And then how do you see the future of this GIS?
Are you asking everyone, or are you asking Margaret?
Everyone.
Okay. Well, actually, I wanted to respond to your earlier question a little bit as well, if that's fine with you. And you say the special moments. Well,
Sure.
my response is very general, because there are lots of special moments at every time. This is like the biggest thing. So I'm very excited about something like receiving your, well, finally your dissertation is approved and you graduate, getting this degree is a big thing. Your first publication, getting the first job, and everything. Added kind of as I added a book, a book as well, like the first time editing a book, first time organizing a conference. So every first time, it's just such an exciting moments for me. But the reason I shared this is that, well, you are along the way. So it's a kind of there's a milestone at every time in life. So just look at the near future. Well, what is my objective? When that objective is achieved, that's an exciting moment. That's what I felt.
Yeah. And then thanks to the early effort of like the scholars like Dr. Madden and Dr. Yao, that's how we got acquainted with GIS, and then how we are using this technology to like do our dissertation as well. So yeah, and then like now we are living in more like kind of like era that like there are public participatory ways to do the GIS, and then also the online GIS thing. And then these are more of new technology, like how this GIS is like transforming. And then I see this kind of like technology-wise transformation, but like I'd like to hear like how you are also experiencing this advances in GIS in recent years.
Well, one thing I think is really exciting is moving geovisualization into more immersive environments, and
Right.
so virtual reality and augmented reality and things like that, animations. It is it's a lot of work, and sometimes it may not be really quantifiable. So it's a little bit, it's very artistic, and I like that. But it also has some value, I think, because it has a level of excitement and drawing people in. And, you know, if that's the way, the hook to get people to come in and then start really thinking about the, you know, the, all the nuts and bolts, the coordinate systems and analysis and the math that goes into GIS. I think that's okay. I think it will be more of our future for interfacing with geospatial data. So it's like we should get used to it. And so that idea of you know, almost having like wearable sensors and you know, just having analysis tools at our disposal in our everyday life is just going to increase. But one thing is interesting to me. I love the idea of the augmented reality. So I played around with the Microsoft HoloLens headsets, and then you see your world, but then you see the augmented reality on top of that. You can interact with the web. It is just incredible. I absolutely love it. But I can only do it for about 10 minutes, because after that, I think it's the weight of the headset on my head. I get nauseous. I have a headache for the rest of the day. And, you know, it's okay, so that's not going to work if we are supposed to be moving into this world of, you know, augmented reality. That's considered now the human factor. So there's a human factor involved with all the technology, I think, that we're adapting. So I just would like to, you know, we can all keep that in mind, I guess, as we go forward. So.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. I have something to share as well. About 1 year ago, it was in November as well. So I was at a conference and chatting with colleagues, and I got that question that people, what do you think about the future of GIS? Do you think it will die, or do you think geography will die, or something like that? I said, well, I don't think, I'm not sure about geography. Well, well, I don't have any doubts or anything, but because I'm in GIS, I was more interested in, I feel like more confidence in talking about GIS science in general, instead of the whole field. So I said, well, GIS science, I don't really see any opportunity for it to go away. It may be a little bit more independent because it's so multidisciplinary. It connects to so many different areas of study, right? There's a Manasi, or did you say that it's multidisciplinary and you got involved into it? You come from a different background, but you also use GIS. Yeah, and I constantly interact with people who are doing GIS work, but they are not geographers, not necessarily in one discipline, all kinds of disciplines. So there's an opportunity for everyone. And Margaret shared some wonderful kind of vision for the future, the visualization, the immersive visualization part. And there are also different areas I'm interested in, like the big data computation. I shared my story because I was always interested in computer science. So that's the visual analysis, big data analytics, that kind of thing. It also interacts with GIS, but there's also application, the human dimension of GIS science. And Manasi is doing that, right? Planning. So I think it has a really a bright future. It connects everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that like based on Dr. Madden's experience, this GIS was first implemented in more like earth science factor, like to like measure, like to combine this remote sensing and then the GIS database. And then at the same time, I see that like nowadays GIS begin to implement more of social values and then social studies into this. And then I know that like Dr. Shannon is here, and then like what Dr. Shannon is also doing is about bringing the civil effort, the public participation to build this database, which is like inevitably important to like bring like benefit out of our society. So that's is another like good change that we are experiencing. And Amanda, do you want to add something more?
Yes, I also want to say not only the technologies, but the people who are behind the button pressing, the people who are behind it have gone from just a very select group of individuals. Dr. Madden had shared pictures of us from the ASPRS back in the I think it was like 1930s, 40s, where it was all just men doing GIS. And now if you look at a group of GIS scientists, it's very diverse.
Right.
We're seeing just this increase in a variety of people who are involved in GIS. I have had the privilege to serve on the board of directors of ASPRS as the Student Advisory Council chair, and then later the Young Professional chair. And now I'm serving on the Diversity Task Force of the ASPRS. And one of the questions we're looking at is how do we inspire people of other ethnicities, other backgrounds, other academic levels to participate in GIS and to get involved. So part of the history of GIS has led to this area where we're in now, where we see a future that is quite mixed and quite, as Monty put it, multidisciplinary, but also multicultural and just different levels of academia that feed into what we are today.
That is the next question that I was about to come up with. No problem. You like made the perfect this kind of like transition in this topic. So I know that like in recent years we see more and more women in professional GIS field, and then I know that like in like I don't know, a couple of decades ago in academia in general, and also in this professional GIS field, there were more, how can I say, dominantly men, the male professionals in this area. But like I see like what Amanda said, there we are witnessing more and more women in this field. And then I think that really is inspiring because like many younger generation and students, they look up like who's out there, and then like that really gives you like a role model in terms of that. But still I'd like to hear like was there any like kind of a little bit of difficulty or struggle that like being a woman in this GIS professional field? And then like I'd like to hear like how you have felt, how you have experienced like this kind of experience.
Manasi, did you want to say anything? I feel like we've not given you a chance.
No, actually, Inhye, to that question, I've actually never been in a room where I would be the only woman doing GIS, but it's definitely me and my colleagues have been outnumbered.
Mhm.
But I think that our just love and focus on GIS never really let us think about it that way. So we produced just as much competitive stuff out of a class or a project or a submission. So I guess just being nerdy about GIS helped most of the time. And also when you're talking about College of Environmental Design or design programs in general, our process doesn't actually start and end at GIS. So it's half of what we do. So after it's done in GIS, it all goes to the graphic design part of it. So it's every map that we do is a process from taking the idea, working with it in GIS, finishing it in GIS, bringing it into graphic design softwares, and then getting to the final product. Um, and I must say that the girls are really competitive when it comes to graphic design.
I know somebody who took one of our workshops said that in their office, it was mainly women and working at a technician level for GIS, and they had GIS on the door, and underneath that they put girls in stress. So I thought that was kind of clever, but I do see, and I'm not sure why, more women in GIS than maybe some others, maybe photogrammetry or engineering. Some of the other kind of subdisciplines that are part of GIS. And that goes back to, you know, the disparity of women in chemistry, physics, and engineering courses. And, you know, part of it is the culture, I think. So I'm glad that that is changing. But there are more women in biology than there are in some of the other sciences. I wonder if GIS is, it's very multidimensional. So I think women are good at multitasking. I think that connection with art is a real thing, art and design, being, you know, thorough and conscientious of details and things like that. But I don't want to disrespect my male colleagues who are also here in this, so I'd love to hear their thoughts too. And then Angela, you know, about the computer science side of it, do you feel like is that more balanced now than it used to be? Angela, I didn't know if you had any experience with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, in computer science, yeah. Well, Manasi just said outnumbered. Probably that's the case, still the case in computer science, but not as significant as in the past. It's getting better, even though it's still kind of it's unproportional. But in GIS, I know you are definitely correct, Manasi. That kind of ratio, you see the imbalance. But in our small world, in our department, in the associations I was associated with, I thought I experienced some really kind of pleasant direction trend. It's very women friendly. In our department, for example, we have more female doctoral students doing GIS work than male. So I want balance. I do not really want to see outnumber in the other direction, but that's kind of, well, at some point it seems to be the situation. And at the professional associations, there are special opportunities for women scholars. For example, UCGIS, I don't know whether or not everyone is affiliated with are receiving messages from UCGIS. They give some special opportunities, created special opportunities for women scholars, students as well. Special opportunities for students, regardless of gender. And there's a specific NSF grant that's targeted for women scholars, particularly students, but everyone can apply. It's called Chalice. So this is going to be the 4th year. So you're encouraged to apply as well. So kind of my little experiences.
Yeah, a few years back, I had the opportunity to work on with the American Association of University Women, who puts on a summer camp for young girls, 13 years old, and it's a week-long camp. And I was the camp, what they called a camp mom. So I had a group of about 7 girls, and I was their mentor for the entire week. We stayed in the dorms, and it was just giving them that platform to study science without any sort of interference. I just saw within that week these young women just grow so much confidence to say, I can be a scientist too by the end of the event. All the young women want to be scientists, and I would love to follow up with them now and see where they are, but programs like that do exist, and we are seeing an increase in women just gaining the confidence to say, I can do it. And that's all it takes, is to say that you can do it. Because so many times, I know even growing up, I was always told, you're a woman, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, you should behave this way, you should behave that way. But when that's erased and you know you can do it, there's that avenue that exists.
That's the crack that like gives you an idea that like yeah, just give some crack that like to your fundamental idea of like we should do like this or we shouldn't do like this, and then this like making this small crack in this like old idea, that's the really beginning part to start your own journey. And then I'd like to mention the quote, the comment from Dr. Shannon, talking about like we really need to praise the effort made by the feminist GIS in the mid 20th century. I totally agree. This is also the feminist geography and then the feminist GIS. That's also the achievement that we have made in this geography department, and then in collaboration with other experts as well. And then that is something we really need to keep in mind. And then yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you, Dr. Shannon. And since we are moving forward to the last 10 minutes of this session, I'd like to bring up kind of like a question of like more of my personal understanding of this, the career, and then like how we can keep pursuing our career in this GIS field, and also like in your own expertise. So have you heard of two-body problem, or is it just something that I concern? So I learned this term two-body problem while I was just like Googling. And then this is a term that when you are in a relationship, in a partnership, and then like if both of them, both the partners, they are pursuing their own career, and then they could not live in the same city, so that like they are doing kind of like long distance or whatsoever, so that like they need to kind of like separate their life. They cannot get back together because of their own career pursuit. So that is like the two-body problem is about, because they are like partners, but they're like fall apart. So like I think this can be one of obstacles that really kind of hinder women professionals to stay in this career path. And then of course it's not only about the partnership, but also the marriage, and also the child caring thing is also another challenge. And nowadays things are getting better, and then especially in professionals in academia, we have like better condition than like the industry. Like we have like maternity leave, and then that is really helping for women to stay in our career path. But still it's like there's, that doesn't mean that like we are free from these concerns. So how have you get through this kind of challenges? And I'd like to hear from two women professors first.
Well, this really makes me think of the very first AAG meeting I went to, because I always went to ASPRS. I didn't go to AAG. So, and this has to be, oh, it could be 25 years ago. And I wanted to go to all the sessions that were different than what I normally go to. So I joined, it was just an informal group getting together. It was entitled Women and Promotion. And I was, I'd already graduated, but I think I was a research scientist at the time. And there were maybe 12 women and there was one man. And it was very interesting because there were some women who were a little bit, maybe not full professors, but maybe associate professors. So they had gone through the promotion process, and then there were graduate students and assistant professors. And the only thing we talked about was timing of your family. So, you know, you're in graduate school, do you wait to start a family until you get your job? And then, oh, now do you wait until you get tenure? And oh, now do you wait until you get, you know, full professor? It's just, what do you do? And so there are a lot of sharing of experiences and what worked. And I had my children during graduate school. And so that certainly has its challenges. But, you know, it was, you know, pretty much people were saying, you know, it is what it is and you live with it. But, you know, there's a lot of questions about that, partners who have other, you know, jobs in different places. And then we got to the end and the gentleman spoke up and he said, you know, for 45 minutes, this is all we have been talking about. And I never thought about it. You know, it was just like, it was a non-issue to him. So that was a real, you know, awakening for me, and that it is a very important topic and that women do need to be sharing and talking about it. So, so many times, you know, we haven't even in our department talked about balancing life and work balance. So, yeah, so I know that Angela's had that experience of working and having a family also.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, Margaret. I was just nodding. So, well, yeah, you said it very well. That's definitely true. I was invited to kind of had a very similar panel session at a conference about 2-3 years ago. It's about the same issues. I'm not going to repeat the same thing, but I was happy to see panel. There were like 5 people there. 2 of them are men, but they seem to be more senior colleagues. I guess that's probably, now I'm just thinking about it, probably because Margaret said, well, if people haven't experienced kind of different types of life and know their colleagues experiencing this struggle, they probably will not be able to understand as much as other people who do have this knowledge. So what we thought about it, and I even did a little bit research, and my personal feeling is that it does take a very supportive spouse in the first way. Well, life will be easier that way. So that's important. But everyone's life is different. It takes other support. And unfortunately, there are lots of other types of support as well. For example, peer support. And you are right, doing it right now. We share our experiences. And so we know we have encouragement, kind of moral or spiritual support, but also we share experiences, how to handle this and that. So that's peer support is important. And there's also community support you can seek, and people can make efforts for. At UGA, for example, when I was here as a junior assistant professor, there were some policies. We didn't even have maternity leave. There's no policy like that. So I gave birth to my children without any maternity leave. But immediately after that, it's actually a women group, female faculty members. So they had a proposal and said, well, we should give female faculty the maternity leave. Now we have the policy in place. I was so glad to see that. But if nobody really, what male counterparts, probably they didn't think about it, never had this experience. So it does take female faculty who know this, who understand this, to initiate the efforts. So that's done. And so community support, and you can also seek it out yourself. So self-support, kind of within the family, self-support, peer support, and community support.
And I think GIS is a really great career choice because it can be done remotely. Like you said, Inhye, you could be, you know, in your home office. And so it may give, you know, more opportunities to work remotely, to have, if you're in a partnership and one person gets the job where they have to be at a certain location, you may be able to work remotely, and maybe even more so because of COVID, because we're all more familiar with it, and it is probably going to be our future. So I would hope that for all of you, you know, you'll have a better experience with that.
Yeah, I don't have this much of concern right this moment, but I always like think about like how my life would be changed like when I get older, and then like if I decide to keep my career, but like and I don't want to give up on my career because of the family or child caring things. So having this kind of like role models, as I mentioned earlier, is really important, because you know that like someone already have gone through this already, and then like you know that like I can do that because some other people already made it. So that's a really good idea to have it. And also like I totally agree with what Dr. Yao said, like to foster this kind of atmosphere that like we need to raise our voice to demand for something that we really need to pursue our career. And yeah, that is yeah, really an important thing. And do you have any thing in mind for Amanda or Monzi in like terms of this?
I also want to add that I think the conditions that we are under now, it's more supportive if women want to be independent, if they don't want to have a family or they want to pursue other options. And there's a lot of pressure from families and a lot of pressure, social pressures that women have been constrained to. And I think a lot of that has been lifted and has given us this ability and mobility to be where we want to be and pursue careers that we're actually passionate about.
Yeah, I really agree with what all of you have said, and especially Dr. Yao, that building these support groups for ourselves, and women are really good at doing that for each other and helping each other up. And especially with my experience with the geospatial community, the kind of collaboration it brings and the kind of work that we do together, we really do think alike. And I have built these associations over the past with fellow colleagues that we really boost each other up when needed. And it starts with these small acts of peer support, that then when you are more successful and busier in life, you look back to these connections and seek that support. So I think I'm glad that I'm able to, thanks to NASA Develop and everything that I've done with the geography department, and made these associations with a lot of people here. And I think Doris has left, but she's a part of that too. But it really helps, and these associations build over time, and they create your own little community of people that who will root for you, who will cover for you, who will just listen to you at times. So I think that helps.
I do want to make one final comment and to share with you. I feel my personal feeling is that this has been kind of all my experiences really helped me to see it's a very supportive and women-friendly environment in this discipline. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, I agree. Like especially like compared to industry or other private sectors, academia and especially this like the school system, it's really like more of the incubation of like this liberal idea, like liberal ideas, but still that doesn't mean that it's the liberal as politics, but it's more of like the ideas that actually should have been done much more before. And then I think it's really like good progress that like we are moving forward in this direction. And then I'm really glad to see these changes. Like Dr. Yao didn't have maternity leave, but I assume that like Dr. Mu probably had maternity leave. And then I think that's the small but
that's a very important change. I'm so glad the policy was in place. Yeah, but even though I didn't have maternity leave, the department had made some pretty friendly arrangement for me. So nothing to complain. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And just a quick word of advice, find a department like our geography department that I think is very family friendly. And, I have seen, faculty come in and they have their babies, and their partners help to some take part of the time off, and then they change, and then the other half, the other partner stays home. So and things like a faculty meeting where it's not frowned upon if you have to jump up and go get your child from daycare. It makes a big difference. So think about that when you're looking for a job as well. What is it, a family-friendly environment, I think.
Yeah, and I also like add one more the thing that I've witnessed. So like when I went to one conference, and then there was a keynote speaker or was a presenter, and then she went up to the stage and then she did her presentation, and then as soon as she finished her presentation, she went back to her baby and then like took care of her baby at the conference room. And then like I thought that was really like a moment that like, oh, maybe that could be my future. Like I can like pursue my career, do the presentation at the conference, and then like take care of the baby. It's like all set. So like that was really the moment that like really changed my mind. Like, and then yeah, I want to see everyone for a long time. And then like I don't really want anyone to give up on their career because of their challenges. I mean, like every family is different, everyone is different, but still I really encourage you to not give up on this chance. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, since 1 hour for this session is over, so I'd like to thank everyone for joining this session, and then it was so encouraging and then so meaningful to have this conversation, and then I'd like to see you in other chances too.
Okay, thank you for organizing it,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank you. It was so much fun to be with you guys.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for joining us.
See you around. Bye.